Hey everyone, welcome to the Mobile User Acquisition Show. In the Mobile User Acquisition Show, we talk about how to use mobile user acquisition strategies to grow your app quickly and capital efficiently. The Mobile User Acquisition Show is presented by me, Shamant Rao, mobile growth leader and founder and CEO of the mobile growth consulting firm Rocketship HQ. Each episode includes strategies, tips, and pointers from the leading edge of mobile user acquisition that you can use to unlock tremendous growth for your app in a sustainable and capital efficient.
Our guest today is Claire Rozain. Claire is the user acquisition manager at Product Madness. Her experience spans a wide range of mobile apps from dating to games. On the show today, Claire underlines the critical importance of using live ops to increasing the user's lifetime value. She underscores how important this can be even if the users already have a strong LTV. As a note, the opinions and views shared in this episode are the interviewees alone, and they are not in any way connected to the views of the company Product Madness. Excellent. I'm very excited to welcome Claire Rozain to the Mobile User Acquisition Show. Claire, welcome to the show.
Hello, Sharon. Thank you for inviting me. I'm really happy to be here and to speak with you today. I think we have some exciting topics, so really happy to share on that.
Absolutely. You've been one of the people that's very forward thinking in the mobile space, and I've definitely followed a lot of your writing and inputs and talks. So definitely thrilled to have you here today, Claire. And today we're going to talk about how apps can think about increasing the lifetime value of the users. So why is it important to think about this? Because, as context, you work for social casino apps that already have very high lifetime value. So why is it important to think about, how do we extend this even further?
So I think it's really important because you don't have a user just to have one purchase or one open. The life cycle of your user is something really important to work on. In order to extend this LTV that you got from the user, because of course you got some whales, but you also have a lot of long tail users that are going to spend on a weekly basis, and those users are also key. So I think it's really important also to focus on this kind of strategies where you actually kind of work on your user experience through, for instance, ECRM, marketing automation, where you adapt your advertising and push new features to those users and even the one that already engage. So I think all those things are really in product and also growth strategy that can extend and make the funnel more optimized in a way. And so people, they can actually spend more on your product because they enjoy actually the content the content pushed in the application.
Yeah, so you're saying there is a natural lifetime, but that can be extended if they enjoy the content more, if you put in the hooks that help them extend the lifetime value itself. So what are some of the key strategies that can be used to extend the user's lifetime value further?
So there is several different strategies. First, it's really important to onboard your users the right way. When, for instance, you send a push notification just to welcome your user, like I saw by the past huge differences between a user that doesn't have a welcome push and the one that have one. So, I saw 40%, like around 40% won't come back if they don't have this notification. So it's kind of huge when you see that user can be really, really expensive, especially on social casino apps. Like you really want your user to come back. So onboard your user is really important. And, sometimes people they have a bad first impression of your game. Like they open your application and after they will never come back. But if you re-engage them, you really are able to have great results on the return of those users. I also think that it needs to be really personalized. Like the best is still like to kind of onboard your user with the data you can get from it. Like for instance, my name is Claire. If an application say, "Hey Claire, would you mind to come back?" or just "Hey user 111, would you mind to come back?" I would prefer the first version than the second one. I would feel a bit like a robot if not. So I think it's important to personalize.
Yeah.
I will say also like be fun is really important. Like use emojis when you speak to your consumer, and also like push what really interests the user. Really segment your user based on what interests this user. If, for instance, you can ask the user what kind of information he's interested in, and then you can make several segments. This is actually really good to increase your CTR on each content and even re-engage a user with the content you actually like. But don't like over push your user as well, because even if you want him to come back, like you don't want him to just escape. Yeah. So just like not to make him churn, I would say, like if you're a news application, for instance, like 3-4 times a day is okay for push notification. But if you're a game, like once a day or less is really good. Like sure. I mean, news, you have something that is really important because you want to be up to date. But sometimes in the games, you just don't want to come back because you're kind of busy and you have some other things to do. So yeah. Find the right time, the right moment, and the right also frequency about this. After, I will say, like, you need also to be creative when you re-engage your user. Like in social casino apps, for instance, we are really lucky. We have a lot of really exciting live ops events. So, for instance, when we think on how to re-engage a user that really enjoyed a game, we will more likely push a game he liked, or even more like a feature he likes, a live ops. Is about to, like, if he's always playing because of the live ops event, for instance, we are going to push it to him in social media, but also like in push notification, advertising, and so on. So I think all those things are really important. And if you really like your user, I think you better also ask your user in the application what he thinks about you and how you can actually improve. So if you can push like a landing page with a survey or something like this, I think it's also good to kind of understand like if your user actually like your game, what he likes, and make the user journey evolve based on that.
Yeah, so there's just a lot of possibilities, a lot of ideas, right? That there's a lot of things you can do to engage your existing users to really extend their lifetime value. Just communication, live ops, all of the ideas that you talked about, just even the push notifications in and of itself can be huge. So obviously a lot of these require time, effort, and resources. So how should a team evaluate putting resources behind extending the lifetime value through CRM or live ops or messaging as opposed to user acquisition?
So to me, I think it's kind of a tricky one because we kind of, make people work in silo like products, CRM and UA, where actually I think it's all together. Like I began like a CRM manager, then I was UA manager, and then growth manager. And I feel like we should be really close and we should all have the same resources. You don't get a user just to get a user. Like you need after to make him have a good user experience. And if you have a huge UA team with no project behind, or no sustainable project that he can enjoy, then is it really important to have user, So I think it's really important also to have product team that can always innovate and have a big USP, because we know like there is more and more competition, and if you don't innovate in your project, if you don't personalize the user experience, if you don't make it dynamic to the user you get in UA, and actually even increase the live event you are doing to entertain your user, you're not going to have results. So I think each team needs like same resources, and I think there is not one less important than the other.
Yeah, it's a good point in that in a lot of companies, UA and CRM can be siloed, and really they need to be working hand in hand. They need to work closely together as well. So just to switch gears a bit, in live ops, what kinds of events have you found the most effective? And do these differ from app to app or genre to genre?
So I think live ops events are really like the experience that is the closer to the user. And what I saw perform really well is, for instance, all the seasonality that you can make from it. For instance, we have a game called Lightning Link, and we are doing like a link must for December, which is a really exciting event where we can actually have different live ops and engage highly user, for instance, for 1 week, 2 week, where with this event, where he kind of play for himself, but also to win even more in the event, and also he's kind of engaged because he's like not against the other, but you are always in competition with other players. So I think it's kind of really entertaining. Yeah. I think collectibles is also something that works a lot in social casino apps. Like everyone is doing it. We just have one on our Cashman Casino application. It's a new season. We are doing kind of different seasons with a different theme, which are really interesting. And for this one, it's you have some pinata game, you have some mini games. Like it's really out of the classic slot that you have. So it's really great because you can also expand your target thanks to all those kind of events, and so make convert more people. And so also the tournaments are working really well because players are always wanting to compare themselves with others. So all of this actually make live ops really key because this is how you boost your daily active user engagement, your revenue, and this is also where you have opportunity to add more placement for ad monetization and to make the user the best from your user and the best value you can make from him.
Yeah. Just even within events and live ops, it sounds like there's a lot of very different kinds of events you can have, right? And I know you spoke about this in the context of social casino, but I'm sure a lot of these can be adapted to different genres just as well. So with the live ops, do you typically, so let's just say there's a tournament or you have like collectibles, right? So how do you typically have users at different experience levels or different kinds of users or different segments of users? Does everybody see the same thing? Do you find it helpful to segment them? What are some of the ways in which it's helpful to think about segmenting users for live ops events that you have found effective?
Yeah, so actually for instance, like we all have different kind of users. Some users, they will make value from ads, for instance, and some users from EIP, in-app purchases. So the different segmentation we do is like, we say to a user, for instance, that didn't pay, do you want to continue to play? And if yes, like let's watch, for instance, one ad, and from this we are doing some segmentation. We also have some different targeting option, of course, depending on the location, the OS, the source of install, the purchase item in the game, the project view device, if it's a new user, old user, a dormant user, engaged user. I think it's really important when you re-engage your user to always segment it like in the best way to give a personalized user experience. And you can't mix like one-time user with a risky engaged user or people that install your application for ages, for instance, or and those who installed it yesterday. So I think it's really important to kind of segment with the behavior you have in the application. Also, like for instance, like how much your users already spent in your application. Maybe you don't want a really big marketing pressure on a user that is already spending a lot, so you don't need to re-engage him. So depending on all those criteria, I think you really need to segment your strategy.
Yeah. And are there specific kinds of events that appeal more to, let's just say, new users or less experienced users? And are there specific kinds of events that appeal more to more experienced users? How would you recommend thinking about that?
So in my last company, like it was like a active user, inactive user. So when you had inactive user, like you had to make them active without churn, which is like a maze, because if a user is inactive, they don't always want to be active, but it's really important.
Sure.
Because since iOS 11, I think we all know that if you have a dormant application, then iOS can delete your app automatically. It's a feature. So I think the first thing to see is like inactive player and active player. It's the most simple thing to do. And active player maybe be more in the seasonality on the live ops events, on all what is kind of shining, but also respect the pressure, because if a user connected yesterday, maybe doesn't want like a push today, like you really need to adapt to the vertical. And inactive user find a way with, for instance, some incentive to make them come back. Like for instance, if I bought a pair of shoes and it's in my card, I just quit the application. Like I think I would love to have a promo code or something to buy it. And in this time, it's the right time to re-engage your user.
Yeah. Right. That makes a lot of sense. And just speaking of incentives, how should marketers be thinking about incentives during live ops? Because I would think there is a risk that if you give incentives, some people might be put off, but some people might say, oh, I want these free coins, or I will come back. So how do you recommend thinking about incentives in live ops?
So I think your incentive needs to be even more in social casino. It's a real game economy, so you need to balance like the advantage you give and what you already have in the game, because at the end of the day, if you don't give enough, they are not happy, and if you give nothing, if you give nothing, they are not happy, and if it's the opposite, it's the same. So you need to, with scientific game, you really need to work with closely and follow like all the reward that you give, and to adapt it also to the seasonality. Like for instance, if you have a live up events, like you need to adjust to the promo code you are doing, for instance, on your engagement, because it can be double code, so it won't be benefit. And same for instance, rewarded video. If you have this placement, for instance, in your game, and same time you have a live ops events as well, that gives you a lot of rewards. You need both teams to communicate and to see if it's not overlapping, because at the end of the day, sometimes when you do too much, it's the worst things to do, because at the end of the day you are going to lose your money. So
yeah. And also, if a user just becomes used to getting freebies, they don't value actually paying money within the game so much either.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually social casino is a tricky one, because you are not winning real money. So you need to still see value in those coins to kind of pay for it. And I think it's the same for all games. Like people, they play games and they are like highly entertained to level up, and so to pay, for instance, in-app purchases. Like if they don't are entertained enough, then they don't pay. They just go on social media and take the reward and then wait the next day. So you really need a really high quality game And you need also to balance like the value you give to the money you send to your consumer with points.
Yeah, that's a good point. They shouldn't just take the reward, go away, come back next day, take the reward, come back, go away, take the next, and they could just keep doing that. And I think it's important to have a game that's intrinsically appealing, right? Because they should come back and just continue to engage in the game itself.
Yeah. I think like the user is really the key. Like you need to entertain the user, and so you need a proper USP. And I think that's why people they come back. It's the same in dating. Like people they come back because thanks to the dating app they met someone, or they are having a good conversation. Like it's not just like you get a user and then it stops and you just shoot some ads or thing like this. You need like to solve a personal marketing problem. And this project is here for this.
Yeah. That is so insightful. And I think goes beyond what a lot of people just think about as UA just in terms of media buying, right? It's not. And I think you need to solve somebody's personal marketing problem, like you said. So with all of this, with live ops specifically, when you're looking at building a system or a process for live ops, what might be some of the common mistakes that marketers make while executing this?
So I think that's one, but just to react of what you said, like I read something last time and I thought it was so true about media buying. Like you can't judge the performance of someone in UA according to the ROAS it has. And I think it's really important to underline this. And it's really cool that we are doing this kind of podcast, because so we can underline that even if you are the best UA manager, if you don't have a proper USP in your game to make your user purchase, you are never going to have a revenue. So I think it's good to also to share this thought, because a lot of people begin and think like depending on their ROAS, they are more or less good, which is not obviously the case. But to speak about so the mistake I saw, it's basically a static onboarding. So someone that will not do what we said previously, and like do segmentation, and will just send for instance a push notification to the whole user base, which will be terrible because you will have a huge churn and lose a lot of users. So I think it's really important to do an onboarding and adapt it, but make it dynamic for each user. And depending on all the user react, day 3, day 5, 7, you change it. I think no personalization as well is a mistake, because when you send a notification, like you want to, I don't know, it's kind of strange, but it's like when it's integrated like a message, and like when my friends send me a message, like at least they know my name. It's maybe terrible because at the end of the day, it's a brand speaking to a customer, but I want to be considered like a human.
Sure. Yeah.
So yeah, I would say also don't spam the user. And if you begin with your application, I would say also like maybe trust some solution like a batch, for instance, that are really dynamic, and don't do your in-house ECRM, because sometimes it can make the integration really hard, and it can make also the process really hard. Like ECRM, to be honest, like it's not something that is supposed to be really, really complicated. I remember I worked on Engage by the past, and I just had to click on a button. So I think it's something like the easiest is the solution. The best you can focus on all this marketing automation you do after.
Yeah. Right, definitely. I think there's pitfalls, but there's definitely opportunities. And like you said, even for a high LTV apps like social casino apps, it can be so critical to use live ops and push notifications really to extend the lifetime value. Claire, this has been very insightful. I've certainly taken a lot of ideas from you today. This is perhaps a good place for us to start to wrap up. But before we do that, can you tell our listeners how they can find out more about you and everything you do?
You can find me on my website, clairerozain.fr, or on LinkedIn or Twitter. Don't hesitate to reach me. I will be happy to exchange.
Excellent. We will link to all of that in the show notes. And this is perhaps a good place to wrap. Thank you so much, Claire, for being on the Mobile User Acquisition Show.
Thank you, Shannon.
For more tips, pointers, and strategies from the leading edge of mobile user acquisition, subscribe to our YouTube channel right here, or check out our blog, rocketship.hq.com/blog.